Welcome to Creating a Family's Weekend Wisdom. I'm Tracy Whitney, the host for this short discussion about open adoption. Today's question comes from Tabitha. I've summarized it so that we can get right to the meat of her dilemma right away. She asks us, how do I handle an adoption that has been closed from the first mom's side of things? We don't even have a photo of her despite our requests. For context, it will help our listeners to know that Tabitha and her husband were under the impression and planning for an open adoption, at least to the extent of contact via email, photos, or communication through the agency to start. However, the birth mother has since shut that down and is no longer in communication, not even with the agency. So thank you, Tabitha, for sharing your story and reaching out for help. We appreciate that this represents some vulnerability on your side of things, and we want to acknowledge that. But we also want to say congratulations on your recent adoption. I hope that you and your new little guy are settling in well together and learning each other well, and maybe even getting some sleep in the process. So let's start with kind of like a foundational premise that will help you navigate your questions and help me navigate through this with you. The very first important thing to remember is that even when there is no contact, or even if there is no contact right now, this relationship with your child's birth mother matters profoundly. It matters to you, or you wouldn't be asking, and you know that it matters to your child now and down the road as he grows. You went into this adoption believing that it would be open, at least to some extent, and you are feeling frustrated that the door feels pretty firmly shut right now. You don't even have a picture of her, and I understand that that can feel heartbreaking and frustrating and confusing and deeply unsettling for what it might mean down the road for your child. I get it, and I'm sorry. That is a challenging thing to sit with, especially in these early days of also being sleep deprived and kind of overwhelmed with the newness of all that has just happened in your life when you welcome this little guy into your home. So let's settle that there first. Like, this season is a lot of new, a lot of big, and a lot of hard. And it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay not to know what the next step is. It's okay to just focus on his precious little face and meeting all his little needs and taking care of him right now. So I hope that kind of takes off some of the pressure, but then we can talk about how this might have happened, where to go from here, and that kind of stuff next. Open adoption exists on a spectrum, and one of the most brutal truths is that openness cannot be enforced from either side of the relationship. Birth parents can and often do step back, sometimes just a little bit, sometimes completely, even when they had shared an expectation with you that there would be some openness moving forward. And it's good to know that this isn't really about rejecting the child. It's not about rejecting you as the adoptive family. Most often, it's about them trying to grapple with their own grief and their pain, their confusion, their fear about the future, or just trying to heal through both the birth process and the relinquishment process. They just may not have the capacity right now to stay connected right now. The period after placement can feel really lonely and isolating and overwhelming, and sometimes they cope with that by pulling away. It's good to understand that this is really more about her capacity, not her as a person, and it's not about you or your worth or your child's worth, or that she's regretting her decision, although she may be. It's really just about her capacity to cope with what's going on right now. That can help kind of soften what might feel pretty personal to you right now and help you recognize that it's really not personal. It's just about her capacity right now. And I keep saying right now because, again, on that spectrum of openness, it can be openness where there's in-person visits and connection and relationship ongoing and sustaining for both of you, or none at all, and that spectrum is really wide. But it's important to remember that the timeline of it is also on a spectrum. So right now there's no openness. It may open up later as she develops her own capacity and as her life circumstances change. So you've already taken kind of that essential step by requesting communication through your agency. And it's important to make sure that the agency knows that that openness and that willingness to communicate is always going to be there. But beyond that, there's a few other things that you could consider. Number one, keep the door open. So this would be physically keeping yourselves open to contact, but also mentally and emotionally remaining open-hearted, open-minded, like that spirit of openness, even if no one is willing or interested in walking through it right now. So again, that means letting your agency know that you are still open to contact. It also might be a little bit proactive on your part where you're continuing to send contact to the agency, sending updates, sending photos, sending little video clips, unless the agency tells you otherwise. The second thing to remember is to not close the relationship on your child's behalf. So even if contact isn't happening right now, again, keeping that mental, emotional capacity of openness and then giving some practical feet to it gives your child more options later as they grow and as they start to own this relationship and own their story. It also means, number three, that you probably need to shift your goals. Shifting your goals might mean kind of a shifting of expectation or a shifting of mentality that says, right now, open activeness is not possible, but I would like to mentally, emotionally, and physically prepare and preserve the possibility of openness. I'm saying these things kind of in a 1, 2, 3, but they're not really steps. They're just all interwoven ways to work inside of yourself through the issues that you're feeling and create an openness of spirit, openness of mind that allows you to shift and deal with your expectations as time goes on. At the heart of the dilemma that you're feeling about this relationship that you expected to be open and is now closed is this child. And everything that you should do should be about what is best for this child in this season of his life. So as he grows, his questions will grow. And you have questions galore, but he will have more. And he will have them in different seasons of his life kind of expressed to you in different ways. Like when he starts thinking and talking about his adoption, and you start laying the foundation for how to talk about adoption, his questions might be like, what does she look like? But then they might grow into, do I look like her? Or who do I look like? It might start with your mommy, decided she couldn't be a parent right now. And it might morph into, well, then why was I placed? Why couldn't she take care of me right now? It might develop into, does she think about me? Does she love me? Does she care about me at all? Even without contact, the way that you hold space for all of these questions now and later will send a powerful message to your little guy. Experts who work with adoptees always emphasize that children do best when, number one, their birth parents are spoken about with respect and compassion. Number two, when their curiosity about their story is welcomed and not feared. And number three, when the adults make it clear that the connection is not dangerous or forbidden and that curiosity about that connection is always, again, welcomed, not feared. So you are going to have to figure out how to kind of practically live those things out. And practicing starting now, even when he can't understand what you're talking about, start talking about it now to get yourself comfortable with and familiar with the language around this adoption story. So you can start by, talking about, we don't have contact right now, but that doesn't mean it won't change. You could say, your first mom is really important to us, even if she isn't part of our daily story. You could say things like, if you want to know more, mommy and daddy will help you figure that out. He's too little now, again, to understand all of this, but your efforts to practice this language and get comfortable with this language and develop that heart intention to always be open to his questions and to maybe contact with her someday will help you be prepared when he does ask questions. It will help you be prepared if she does reach out later and say, hey, I'm doing okay now and I'd really like to have a relationship. It lays the foundation for his identity to thrive even without direct contact. And I want to be faithful to point out in the midst of all of this that it's okay to admit that this is hard for you. It's okay to say to your partner or to your therapist or whoever that you're struggling with your expectations of openness and now it's closed. Many adoptive parents grieve the loss of openness that they had hoped for or that they had expected, not because they need it necessarily, but because they really wanted it for their child. And anytime we want something for our children and that thing doesn't come to pass, it's hard for a parent's heart to grapple with. And there's lots of extra layers and nuance to this kind of hard. Processing all of those feelings about the hard with support, again, with a counselor, with a trusted friend or other adoptive parent or a therapist, somebody who's adoption competent, somebody who's got, some good life experience under their belt. Those are things that can help you cope with how you're feeling right now and then develop tools to navigate it later as your son grows. I would be remiss if I don't point you towards hope, however, because closed now doesn't mean closed forever. It just does not have to mean that. And it might not be the openness that you wanted, and it might not be the openness you wanted right now, but it doesn't have to stay like that forever. So it's important to remember that many birth parents reach out to the agency or directly to the adoptive parents if they have that contact information after they've had time to develop some coping skills or, make peace with their choices or heal and come to this relationship with greater levels of confidence and emotional stability and an intention to support and serve the child well. When that happens, our kids benefit enormously if we can say truthfully, we always believed that this relationship mattered, and if we can welcome that contact on their behalf. So keeping photos and letters and updates ready, even if the agency doesn't want them right now, even if you don't know where to send them, kind of keeping them in a special box or a video file on your computer. Those are ways of honoring that possibility of openness and honoring how important his story is to your family. So the kind of big takeaway from this would be that even without current contact, you can parent your little guy as if this relationship with his birth mother matters, because it does. When you stay open to openness, you're creating emotional safety and honesty and trust. You're giving him a stable foundation from which to express his own curiosity and his own needs later as he grows. And those are gifts that you can give your child now that will carry him for a lifetime. Bolstering his identity, even in the absence of specific information, is a treasure for him for as he grows and grapples with all of his identity and all of his story. I really appreciate, Tabitha, that you reached out and asked this question. It does represent some vulnerability on your part, and I know that it might be hard to grapple with some of this stuff right now. So I'm grateful that you asked for help, and I hope that the perspective I shared helps you and helps your husband as you grapple with these big questions. Listeners, if these thoughts and suggestions resonated with you as well, we would love to hear from you. We want to know, what's your adoption story like? You can leave us a comment in the show notes. You can leave a rating or a review, or you can send your own questions to info@creatingafamily.org with Weekend Wisdom in the subject line. I look forward to talking to you next week, and I hope that you have a great week in the meantime. Thanks for listening.